Thank you indeed, Presiding Officer. It has been a debate that has had a strand of agreement about the definition of the problem. I don't think anyone has suggested there are not problems in rural areas. And that at least gives us a consistent basis upon which to argue about what some of the solutions might be. The agreement on solutions is perhaps less widespread, but there is a thread running through that. Alec Johnstone highlighted that in 1997 price of fuel was 61 pence a litre. Indeed, just looking round the chamber, I may be the only one present who remembers when it was £0.5 crown a gallon. Mr Gordon should not pretend he is of the same age as me and remembers that. It seems somewhat unlikely, I have to say. The fair fuel stabiliser proposed by the Tories has at least the merit of providing an opportunity for discussion and debate around an idea. I note that Murdo Fraser, in his closing remarks, said there would be consultation on that. At the end of the day, let's coalesce around whatever ultimately can be shown to work. That is the important thing. Alec Johnstone quoted some road haulage interests saying that in essence the problem was both price and volatility, and I think that is something which we're all likely to agree with. He also highlighted that independent filling stations of course have less buying power, and I think this is where Duncan McNeill's contribution perhaps failed to grasp the nettle of the issue in relation to rural areas. By focusing on perhaps amending the planning system to increase competition in areas. The issue is not competition on many of our Scottish islands. The issue is not competition in many of our remote communities. There simply is not the volume to support multiple outlets, and there never, ever will be. I will.
McNeill.
That, and I made my position clear that I was making a plea for the situation that faces urban communities. When will the Scottish Government respond to the Competition Commissioner's recommendation, and do the Scottish Government intend to progress that through planning legislation rather than competition legislation?
Stevenson.
I'll come to that in a minute because I am going to say something about it. Let me just, in closing off what Alec Johnstone had to say in my remarks on that, we did indeed vote against the previous amendment, very much on the basis that Liam MacArthur described, that it did appear to be an amendment that sought to move the issue from centre stage. Charlie Gordon, rather unwisely, I thought, talked about the weakness of the pound being a significant contribution to high prices. But of course, the weakness of the pound is a reflection of the weakness of the economy over which the Labour government have presided. There are global difficulties, that is accepted by the government, by this party, by me, but relative differences affect relative valuations of currencies. The pound has sunk against the dollar. That tells us that relatively the UK's administration has been less effective in engaging in the world's economic problems. Charlie Gordon talked about my role as Transport Minister. It is a very great pleasure to stand before you as the UK's longest-serving Transport Minister at the present time. There is a sense of déjà vu. The skin a cat reference that has previously been made is something that we've had before. Mike Rumbles correctly returned us to the important point that fuel in rural areas for our cars, for our goods transport, is a necessity and not the luxury that beer purchases might be. There has been reference to the correspondence between John Swinney and Alistair Darling. Let me just quote from Alistair Darling's letter of the 9th of April, where he focuses on different fuel duty rates for some part of the country would be administratively burdensome for both fuel sellers and the government. I don't think that shows a willingness to engage in a constructive way to solve the problems of rural fuel prices, as has been done elsewhere across the European Union. It can be done. If the Greeks can do it, I hope the UK government might similarly be able to do. Let me briefly talk about the competition issue that Duncan McNeill raised. One of the great difficulties is, if you say when you grant planning permission that it only may be, say for the sake of argument, Shell, because at the moment BP hold all the filling stations in an area, you first of all will reduce the economic value of any investment that's made if you forbid Shell to sell it to other people. So you make development less likely. But if, as is at present a principle of the planning system, you are blind to the person applying, and even if you take account of the person applying, there is nothing to stop the planning permission being transferred to someone else. Refining costs are the same for fuel wherever it is in Scotland. It's important to understand that. Presiding Officer, it has been a good debate. It has been one where I think we're all united in defining the problem in a similar way. Rural areas of Scotland have substantially higher fuel prices than is the case in urban areas. I hope that this illuminates some of the issues, some of the opportunities, and I hope that we will see all members and political colleagues in other jurisdictions united in their efforts to remedy that situation.